Welcome to Leadership is Essential. This panel is going to be a treat. The topic is innovative leaders, of which I have several on this panel. As you know, Wichita State University is developing the Innovation Campus, and we want to be the economic driver for this community and the state. The premise of the Leadership is Essential course is that everyone can be a leader. We all think that leaders are born, not made. I want to dispel that myth. This innovative leaders panel includes DeJuan Walsh, Kansas Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, Teresa Lovelady, President, CEO, Health Core Clinic, Brandon Johnson, President and CEO, Core, Community Operations, Recovery and Empowerment, and Water Access Coordinator, Sunflower Community Action. Jaya Escobar, Associate Director, Upward Bound Wichita Prep here at Wichita State University, and Justin White, Chief Professional Officer, Boys and Girls Clubs of South Central Kansas. Let's begin our discussion. The first question is, when you think about being an innovative leader, what have been those leadership qualities that have pushed you forward?
Well, for me, I think a lot of it is the adversity that I faced in life.
Okay.
I've used that adversity to cause me to go further, to think faster, and to act smarter. Oftentimes, as you mentioned, people have the impression that leaders are born. I became a leader. It wasn't something that I was born with. I developed the courage to understand that I was a leader and that I could lead people and help people lead themselves. So I've used a lot of the adversity that I face in my life to say, I'm not going to let this keep me down. I'm not going to let this stop me. And just the adversity that I see in the world, that's what really fuels me is the injustice that I see in the world, and the need to resolve those issues cause me to go further and to develop strategies to address those issues and to help people recognize what they can see in themselves to address the issues that are affecting them.
Well, how do you get them to see that in themselves when they may or may not believe they can overcome the struggles that they face?
Well, a lot of it is just like one-on-one conversation. It's all about sharing stories and being vulnerable with each other. I think we've gotten a lot away from that. A lot is being able to be vulnerable with someone. And when you can be vulnerable with a person and you can build a relationship with them and be honest with them about things that you've overcome, and I think that really helps to motivate a person to understand that you're genuine in your approach, and you have to be genuine in your approach in order to draw that leadership out of someone, in order to be able to help them understand that, hey, you don't have to accept the circumstances that you exist in, you can actually do something about it. And as you mentioned, anybody can be a leader. I'm not out here advocating on behalf of people. I'm trying to encourage people to advocate on behalf of themselves.
That's wonderful. Others on the panel?
Well, for me, one of the qualities has been just the ability to listen. I've always been a quiet person. I've always listened. I've always been taught that you have two ears and one mouth for a reason, so that you can listen, and really trying to gain the perspective of whoever it is that you're dealing with. As well as, I played football the majority of my life, so, just being on that battlefield, dealing with being down 41 or, 8, and trying to get the team motivated as the quarterback to win this game, to stay in the game. So those types of things, I think for me, listening and then trying to motivate others to engage, kind of like what DeJuan said, not necessarily advocating on behalf of, but engaging with and saying, we can do this. We can do this together, but also listening to what other people want, what they need, and trying to get them motivated and organized around that has been something that's helped me out a great deal.
Wonderful. Others?
Can you restate the question?
Yes. When you think about being an innovative leader, what have been those leadership qualities that have pushed you forward?
For me, I think it's one, a desire to help. And so that kind of has sprung my involvement in different things, or just wanting to help or to be involved. And then two, I think my mindset of, I've seen a lot of adversity. I've gone through adversity, but my mindset of things can be accomplished, things can be done, we have a right. Those types of things have, I think, propelled me to help myself and to help others. And kind of echoing what these gentlemen have said, it's not necessarily about self or advocating for self, but helping others advocate for themselves. Very well stated. It's a desire to help, I think, that shines through for me.
So you think perseverance through those adverse times is a way to do it? Because I think sometimes people let adversity push them down, where they get so depressed that they can't come out of it.
Right, and maybe I like a challenge to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, no, that's not how things have to be, or
But I also think in the valley you grow. Sometimes when we have to go through things, it allows us the opportunity to think and constantly think, how am I going to get out of this situation, or how am I going to improve the situation for those around me? So I appreciate the idea that when you're going through something tough, when you're facing adversity, you can't stop thinking. And I think the most important quality of a leader is the ability to think through any circumstance and never stop that process. I also like to reflect back on the Kansas Leadership Center's ideas about leadership. One thing I really appreciated from some of the sessions that they've had with Ed O'Malley was anyone can lead from any position at any time from anywhere. Traditionally, we think about leaders as those that are the CEOs or at the head of an organization or a business, but anyone can be a leader. And I believe once you empower people to know that they have that opportunity to lead and they have the right to be a leader, that we'll be able to produce and promote more leadership, especially in the various communities across Wichita and specifically minority communities. You know, really looking at the opportunity to be able to just lead, even though things may seem tough, things may seem like they're not going to change, but never stop thinking and never stop thinking that you can make a change and that something will get better. Mm-hmm.
For me, I'd have to say commitment and responsibility. When you're in a role of leadership, you come from a background of playing in various roles within its respective organization or any type of initiative that you take part in. And so once you make that commitment to be a leader, you're making a commitment for the greater good of your mission or whatever the purpose of your organization or business or whatever that initiative may be. And so understanding that commitment and taking on that commitment, that responsibility to be that leadership, regardless if you come in on a day where you don't feel like being there, you don't want to be as committed, you want to just check out for the day, but you have to understand that there are responsibilities and expectations that are far greater than your own personal beliefs or whatever situations you have going on at that particular time.
Very good.
I think it's also the ability to manage resources. So you talked about, you know, when you come in and you may not feel like being a leader at that specific time, but being able to manage the resources around you too, in a way that whether they're human resources or financial resources or whatever the resources you have as a leader, being able to kind of make the best out of that as well.
I agree. I think selflessness is a crucial component to being a leader. You know, as Justin pointed out, you know, especially when you're trying to help other people. I mean, you kind of have to be selfless in that approach.
Very good. Now, when you have faced opposition, because, you know, innovation's about transformation and change, which is why, again, I brought you all together, because I see you all as thinking outside of the box, or some people have said the term, you know, destroying the box and just really being pioneers and trailblazers, which I see you all as being that. But you are facing opposition. Anytime you have an idea or a new approach, everybody's not going to be on board. So when you have been faced with that opposition of people not wanting to see you build a new building or have a march or raise money. When you're faced with opposition, what do you do and how do you handle that opposition?
Well, I think, Martin Luther King said that you can't be, that you won't get consensus. You have to be a molder of consensus. You have to understand that everyone will not agree, but you have to be confident in your leadership. I think it's very important for you to be confident in that you're doing the right thing. Because again, if you try to wait on consensus, we just gonna be waiting,
That's right.
because again, that's the beauty of living in a democracy. We don't have consensus, and I think everybody here can acknowledge that with the circumstances that we exist in here in America and in Wichita. But that's a part of being in a democracy is the people have a difference of opinion, and that's fine, that's okay. But just be confident in your leadership and that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. And going back to vision, I think a great leader has the great vision. And sometimes everybody's not going to be on board, but if you can give your vision or paint your vision in a way that others could at least see your vision, and then you have the compromise, and then you have you got to give and take. And you're right, you can't please everybody 100% of the time, but you can look at the majority of the people that are there. And again, having that vision, and you might not agree with me, but there is still something that has to guide an organization or a leader towards whatever that final goal is. And then really just not giving up. It comes to that, what box? Take the box, look at the box and say, okay, I'm going to take calculated risk to remain within the safe zone, but I still have this vision and I have the opportunities there, and just really balancing a lot of different things from a leadership perspective and going for it. And having those conversations. People are all different. You never know what motivates somebody's disagreement with something, and sometimes just kind of moving to the side and talking to them, and maybe you could find that win-win. But for the most part, doing what's best for the greater good, and what's consensus. You got to move forward with what you think is best for whether it's your organization or a group of people or the march or whatever it is, raising funds, whatever you're trying to do. You got to do what you think. What vision has been placed with you and move forward with it.
Very good.
In relationship to vision, also whatever the mission is.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever the mission is at hand. And so when you're talking about maybe convincing others, basically whenever any group comes together, you come together for a purpose. And so if we're all here for this purpose, then this might be a way that we move forward. And so helping people to understand that, I think, goes back to relationship. The relationships you have within whoever those people that need to come together with, whether they're on the same team or on the opposing team, what's your relationship? And how do you discuss and communicate and go forward with whatever it is you're trying to reach?
And like Brandon said with listening, the 2 ears, 1 mouth, it's very important to listen, because sometimes opposition can add to the vision, because you may be thinking something here, and when you hear the other side and you're willing to listen to, okay, all right, let's improve on where we can go. And so then you can get buy-in, because if I've now added something, you've added to the vision, then we share that same vision now, and we can really move forward.
That's awesome. Very good.
I would also say that leading by example of we can disagree without being disagreeable. No matter what type of opposition you get, names being called, always holding fast to, we disagree on this point. Let's see about how we can work on that. Where do we agree, and where we disagree, just continually conversating in a respectful manner, trying to work towards progress. And again, just listening for that opportunity to work together, because I've seen many times in the past where folks just bicker, but you don't get any progress out of that. So sitting down one-on-one, always extending the olive branch, and then understanding that from the vision, from the mission, this is where we want to go. We all may be focused on that same way. We may all see different ways of getting there, but disagreeing without being disagreeable, we can sit down and support where we can, and where we can or where we disagree, we just keep moving. But a lot of times folks want similar things, but we just don't sit down and talk to each other and listen and disagree in a respectful manner.
How has that worked in your organizations that you have been a part of?
It's worked great, very great. Instead of, like when we tried to bring law enforcement to the table through CORE, and we did a community conversation about knowing your rights, rather than listen to folks who just say they can't stand law enforcement, we still did it because the vision was seeing a stronger community relationship with law enforcement. And I still always reach out. You know, I know that you have issues with law enforcement, with trust. I do too. But come to this meeting. And whether they come or not, I'm always going to be that person who offers you an opportunity to still be a part. And if you're doing something, even if I disagree, I'm going to talk to you about it. You know, what are you doing? So I don't agree with this point, but I do like this. How can I help you with this? And as long as I hold myself to that standard of helping out where I can and where I do agree and always extending the olive branch, I think that helps the organization, that helps the mission, and it overall helps the community to see that we can disagree, but we still can move forward on what we're trying to do.
Very good.
As Teresa stated, calculated risk. I have a saying that my staff, they absolutely hate it and they know what's coming afterwards, but when I say we'll be fine, we'll be fine. Then they know that Justin has something up his sleeve. But as a leader, you have to be able to take risk and be prepared to deal with the consequences and feel content with the outcome, whatever it may be. But it's important to gather your team together and make sure that it falls in line with your mission. Not all the time will they understand your vision behind it, but just having enough confidence within yourself, but then your team to really step out on faith and make some decisions for the overall good of your mission.
Well, and that brings me to another question about, because you are innovative leaders, what happens if we fail? Because that's always my biggest fear.
That's just an opportunity to build on that failure and
Okay.
you know, and let's try a different way now. I mean,
Okay.
you're going to fail many times before you succeed.
Okay.
And it's the people who give up when they fall down that you know, those are, I don't want to say the quitters, but those are not the leaders, you know,
Okay.
because the leader knows I'm not going to, like you have the calculated risk, I'm going to think through this situation, I'm going to come out with several outcomes, and I know like if I get this outcome, this is going to be the horrible outcome, but if that happens, I have plan B, you know, and I have plan C. So, yeah, just
Right. That's the game of life. You know, you don't learn until you fail.
Okay.
Until you have an opportunity to go back and see what could I have done differently. And so you just have to be prepared to deal with those consequences. But everything is a learning opportunity. And if you focus on your core expectations, what you set forth to accomplish, you know, for me personally, as long as my kids are safe, as long as we are financially stable, then any of those areas of opportunity to learn and grow, then they're just that. They're learning opportunities.
I think you grow the most from your failures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually.
as a grant writer, you know,
Yes.
there's just this year alone, I've secured $2.5 million in just
Oh.
operational grants, and then with the building project, that's a $10.7 million project that we've secured funding for.
Congratulations.
And, well, thank you. But I can tell you that long time ago when I first started writing grants, you know, they weren't that successful. And I would always ask and request for the grading sheets because I wanted to know where can I improve. And so each time after that, and even now that I get really good grants, you know, I still want to know what did I do well, so I can keep doing that. You know, I learn from my mistakes because if you're willing to take what you didn't get or where you think you failed and take that and turn that into a win, I mean, you learn so much more on the side when you fail, because when you win, you're like, yay, I won, and you keep moving.
You're confident.
You move on, but when you fail, you're going to think through it. You know, that's that opportunity to think and to
reflect.
grow and all those different, it's the valley, you know, we're growing there, so.
I think it's important if you're going to fail forward, you know. I think that's something that's really important. And as Justin and Teresa have pointed out, ask for feedback.
Yes.
How do you know how to grow and how to do something better if you're not always asking for feedback? So ask for feedback from folks. In the same sense, with grants that when I worked at a previous organization, if we didn't get the grant, I would always make sure to try to set up a phone call with the program officer to ask, well, where do we go wrong? What can we do in the future to ensure that we can secure this grant? It's very important to ask for that feedback so that you know what to do better next time, and don't be afraid to ask for feedback. I think oftentimes when you get a rejection from somebody, people just get down and out, and they don't want to take the added step and call and say, hey, well, why didn't you select me, or what went wrong, what happened in the decision? The best thing or the worst thing that somebody can tell you is no, in regard to asking for some type of response, but it's incredibly important to, like I said, if you're going to fail forward.
And I would look at the language and not necessarily use the word fail, but this was something that I learned the wrong way to do it. And not necessarily, I try not to use the word fail because of what comes with it. So if we weren't successful with this, well, I learned a way not to do it, so next time I won't do it that way.
You think it's growth opportunity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's perspective.
Yeah.
So it might be a little setback. It might be a bump in the road. But failure, I think failure, I think of somebody that falls all the way down into the valley, whereas if we have a setback or if we just have a little bump, then we just continue to go forward. We just maybe a pause for a second, regroup, and keep going.
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful way to
And
put
if you're going to be innovative, you're going to fail many times because
Right.
think about the way they came up with the first airplane. It didn't just happen on day. Anything that's like any successful thing in life
Yes.
came after many failures. The light bulb,
Yes.
just so many different things. So you're going to fail if you're looking for innovation, and if you want to be an innovative leader, you're not born that way. Some people have certain characteristics that when they're born that they could be destined for leadership, but still as you grow you're going to learn so many different things, and from your mistakes and errors or not falling forward, you're going to grow. You're going to grow, and that's if you're willing to get up and keep moving, and keep thinking and keep moving forward. So innovation is synonymous with failing, to be honest, because you're going to have those opportunities to grow.
But when you're leading an organization, though, when they kind of see these setbacks, how do you continue to build trust in your people, though? Because they are looking at you for that guidance, for that vision, for that. And so, because they see you in a certain way. Because you are in those positions, of authority or power. And so when they see it not go the way that it's supposed to go, how do you
See you as a real person, though.
Okay.
Because
Right.
it's
All right.
unrealistic to not have failure. And sometimes
Yeah.
if you're, we're not supermen, super leaders in that way. So you're gonna have those things that aren't going to go right. But I like what you said about relationships. If you have a relationship with people, then and you're open to criticism
Sure.
and feedback, then you're able to just, okay, didn't go that way, guys, let's go to plan B, more so than people holding you accountable for everything that didn't go right, or
Right.
everything that went wrong,
Right.
and throwing it in your face and making you feel bad, because it already feels bad. When you try to accomplish something, you work really hard, and then it didn't work personally, you got to keep that smile on your face, and you got to have
Exactly.
that confidence and say, it's
Yeah.
okay, guys, we say, I got something up my sleeve, next time. But at the same token, you go home and you have to deal with yourself, or you get in your car and you got to deal with yourself, and you're like, oh my goodness, but you still you can't be afraid. You can't, you can't lose that confidence.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I think honesty and transparency is
Yes.
is a huge aspect of
That's
that.
good.
Because again, especially if you're leading an organization, people trust you. Literally,
They
people's
do.
livelihoods
Yes.
depend
Yes.
on you. And if you're the type of person that if you mess up and something don't go right, and then you don't want to tell anybody about it, or be honest about it, then that builds resentment.
Yes.
So being open, honest, transparent. If you come into something that is adverse or a different outcome, talking about it. And as Teresa said, asking for feedback, asking for, input from your staff is, I think, something that's incredibly important. And then at the end of the day, that also builds value for them, because they have some input and some say-so.
We're in this together.
It builds that team mentality.
It's all how you, define success and define failure, but also how you measure that. Because if you have one activity that has one particular result, is that considered a failure if your overall objective is to have a great year? And so it all depends on how you define those different things, because every activity is going to have a result, but just because you don't have the result that you anticipated for one activity doesn't necessarily mean that you failed. And so I think it's all perspective how you look at things, because ultimately, as an organization, you set those short-term and those long-term objectives, and as long as you're staying within line of those goals and objectives, then in reality, are you really failing, or is it just an area of opportunity? The previous organization that I worked for, we were constantly looking at process improvement. And with that, we always looked at past opportunities for us to grow and learn as what can we do to potentially prevent something from happening again, the probability of it happening again. We never stated, what do we need to do to make sure this never happens again? Because we all understand that things happen, and you're not always going to be perfect. So it's somewhat of how you define each of those two things for me.
Okay. When you are innovative people, often do not like change or new ideas. So how do you propose new ideas to your constituencies? I mean, how do you get those new ideas to people? How do you?
I include them in the process.
Okay.
I don't think I think when you come and you provide people an idea, it's a top-down mentality. Being and doing grassroots organizing. I like to do things from a grassroots level. So what are your ideas? Include them in that process of developing the idea versus just providing them with an idea and saying, hey, this is the direction that we're going to move in. Again, always just including them in that process of developing the vision or developing the objective, whatever it is, having them be a part of that, because again, that's also how you develop leadership, is by including them in that process.
And buy-in. Because if you come as a dictator and say, this is what we're going to do, others are going to just by default just reject whatever it is that's being presented, because it's like, some will say, I'll do it because that leader said do it, and others will challenge it.
Thank you so much. This has been an awesome panel. I just want to thank you all again for this wonderful, innovative leadership panel. You have met all of my expectations, and you have just been awesome. I want to give you my own personal hand clap, but I just want to thank you for joining me again for this innovative leadership panel for Leadership is Essential, and thank you again for joining us.